So in this replay, I'm just gonna talk about what I've learned about winning aerialistic battle games in War Thunder. So we've got a squad of P-63s. We've got Eddie and Dan who are flying the A5 variant because they didn't have the C5 variant, which is what me and Flank are flying. And C5, well, they're stock. Me and Flank are spaded, so we're outperforming them in the climb here at the start of the match. So this is going to be me talking about the technical aspects of like what it takes to win a match, and then also talk about the philosophical aspects about the game in general. So I'm going to switch to the sensor view here and detach the camera and let the tape roll. So beginning strat, well, I should start off with how the matches work. It's a 16v16 and it basically is a team deathmatch. Despite the fact that the game is designed around a PvPvE kind of design, it's never really factored in over like the last 10 years because this game mode has not been developed in over 10 years. But all the AI units in the middle of the map, they actually have a part to play in the match. The problem is like I said, the design is just extremely poor. Everything devolves into a team deathmatch because that is the most efficient way to win the match. Just shoot down every enemy aircraft on the other side. So the match is a normal match is 16v16. Sometimes you get smaller matches. I think the smallest you can get is like a 8v8, 7v7, somewhere around there. The matchmaker doesn't really care about the players themselves. It's all factored in by the aircraft, the BR, the nation, but the nation has also been watered down. You get unrealistic, quote unquote, matches. In the old days, realistic meant that it was Axis versus Allies or NATO versus the Soviets, that kind of thing. But that's been done with for a very long time now. So in terms of the matchmaking, 16v16, you're capped at 4 bombers on each side. And usually the side that has more bombers will be at a disadvantage because that usually means they have an extra fighter. That plays into the math there. But when it comes to the 16v16, it really does depend on the first 5 to 7 minutes of the match. If you are not engaged in the first 5 to 7 minutes of the match, you basically are not doing anything and you are handicapping your team. The reason why I bring this up is that I still see a lot of players, especially the US players, they insist on side climbing for the sake of side climbing. So it's trying to get to 5, 6, 7K altitude and then turn into engagement. By the time you do that, right, the game's already over. The game will be decided within the 5 to 7 minute window. That's a 2 minute window, all right, taking into account, the first 5 minutes usually spent climbing. It's in that 2 minute window that the game is decided. By that time, every decision that every player has made has already factored in, and you can really predict 90% of the time, especially if you know what's going on, which side's going to win. This replay that I'm showing here is one of those rare exceptions where even though the enemy team basically played it perfectly, they still lost. But I'll get into the reasons why that happened here. So we've climbed in and we are at the 5 minute mark. So right here, I'm pausing the replay here. Right here is the next 2 minutes, which will determine who wins and who loses, basically. Now, as you can see here, we've already turned in and we're moving in. Now we're in 63s, so this is a weird aircraft in the US tech tree where we don't really need altitude. The higher we go, the poorer our airframe performs, which is the opposite of basically all of the main fighters in the US line. So we've turned in here quite early and we're about to be engaged. What I mean by people who side climb for the sake of side climbing and make themselves irrelevant is a lot of Mustang players, they do that. They will climb off to the left. Sometimes they climb off to the right, and they'll wait till they get to 5K, and then even then they'll wait longer still because 109s will outclimb them most of the time, especially if you're talking like D5 variant. So they will just wait and then keep on climbing. And by the time they do that, it'll be past the 7 minute marker, and the entire team will usually be dead by then. Either the entire team will be dead, or if they get lucky, their team already snowballed and wiped out the enemy team. So they basically didn't do anything. It's important that you appear in the middle of the map by the 5 to 7 minute marker because that way you give the enemy something to think about. So long as you are popped up quite close within 10 clicks and they see that you're there, Now all of a sudden you're exerting pressure on them because now they know that, oh yeah, he's over there. He might be turning to attack. Do I have to pay attention to him? Do I have to make any maneuvers to counter him? Once you start doing that, now you're in play. But a lot of American players, especially the Mustang pilots, they will just happily climb off to the edge of the map, come back, and the game's already been decided, and they don't even know it. And then it's a 1 on 10 situation, and they just die. You'll see this reflected in win rates. American props win rates are slightly below average. I think usually the average win rate is about 55%, but there's a caveat to that in that win rates are also plane dependent, right? Because not all planes are equal in this game. And there is a website called StatShock, which has been in some controversy lately, but they do have the stats for each plane's win rate, so you can compare what the average is for the plane, which is a much better metric to compare yourself when you're looking at that. But you will see that most of the more conservative players, like I've mentioned here, with American pilots that they side climb for the sake of side climbing, they will have much lower below average win rates for the planes themselves. So there's that. So we've already turned in here and we're about to engage. This is a fight that we don't really want to take because there's 6 dudes that have climbed. So as you can see, the enemy is at a significant advantage. Half of the team went down low, and they've dragged the entire tier of our team down, so they're engaged. And the other half of their team is right here. They have air superiority. So it's up to us to deal with it. Now, me and Flank were in the C5s. We're in the best position to deal with it. We're just crossed at 5k, so no need to climb anymore. We're just going to be playing into the hands of the 109s here, which there's no point in doing that. The A5s, the other pair, they're lagging behind, but they're in A5s, so... No, not A5s, A10, sorry. And they're stock, so that's that. So we're at the 5-minute 40-second timer, and we are now committed here. So we've got a big fight here. Now, the problem with the replay, the sensor view that I'm using here is that the stack cards always overlap each other, so I need to adjust the view here. But it's an even fight now. It's a 4-on-4. So we got a pair here engaged with the Mark 5 and the 155. Me and Flank are about to engage with the Helldiver and the 109 F4. There's a third guy that's lower here that we're going to be dragged into as well. But it is what it is. That Mosquito's already down in flames. That XP50 is already shot, I believe. We have a friendly 109 that's below, but he didn't climb as hard as he should have. He should be on par with this F4, but it is what it is. So we're turned in, and the engagement has begun. So we're keeping ourselves in the element here. So we engaged with the Helldiver, took shots, and we just flew right through. You don't want to separate the element in this early on, at least, especially if it's against a fight. Well, it's a Helldiver, so it's not really a priority target. So these are the kind of calculations that you have to put in. If this was another kind of like a yak or something, then might have made a different maneuver, might have extended out to the left instead of continuing through to engage the 109. But because it's a Helldiver, once we pass it, we know that we're relatively safe because we're fast at this point. So we take the fight onto the 109 and staying in the pair. So there goes the 109. We took shots, and now I commit to the engagement. Flank takes the other way around, so he turns right, I turned in left. Helldiver is not interested now, he's gone off, so we've isolated the 109. So this is in our advantage right here. So we want to nail this 109. Now what has happened on the other side is that our other element has been completely slaughtered. I'm not entirely sure what happened on that side. I haven't actually watched the replay. This match took place almost a week ago, but they're out. They're dead, and there's not much they could have done because they're in the what I would say the weaker 63, especially since they were stock. And both Dan and Eddie, they haven't played much, so well, I'll start talking about some of the philosophical aspects here. If you play with somebody a lot, you will get to know what they do, what they think, and like how they act. And that factors in when you're trying to adopt a team play, team fighting style doctrine, which is what we do here. So I've played with Flank for like years now, and I know basically what he's thinking all the time, every time, like about 99%. Every now and then he'll surprise me, and by surprise me, he may do something incredibly stupid or he may do something incredibly brilliant. It's 50-50 around about there for that 1%. But I know what he's doing. I know how to talk. He knows when I say, the way I say it, he can interpret it like what I'm thinking. This will play that long. Now this is one of those 50-50 plays that he does where it's incredibly stupid. So basically we have full advantage on the 109. It was completely isolated. This Helldiver and 155, they're too busy trying to chase down this G2 over there. And they're not interested into us. As you saw in the previous merge there, Helldiver just went away. And we already have an altitude advantage on Helldiver, so he's not that much of a threat. Helldivers are very, very dangerous if they have an altitude advantage on you, just because they can get that one good attack on you, and they have very good turn rates. They can just get in behind you and stick with you, and then you're toast. So here, Flank decides to go away, despite the 109 being right behind me, and he had full advantage right here. We could have easily nailed him, but that did not go to that didn't happen. And what makes this play very, very bad is that the line he takes, he goes for the Helldiver when there's a 155 off to the right here, and there's a Spitfire that's right below. Now the Spitfire can't do anything right now. He's too low in altitude. He doesn't have a lot of energy. We have the initiative. He has to wait for us to attack him, basically. The only way we play into his advantage is if we go down, which we don't need to. But that isn't what happens here. Flank full commits to the Helldiver, and now he's jumped by the Spitfire and the 155, and he's basically out of the game at that point. I need to reverse the roles on the 109 here, so that's what's going to happen. So we'll leave Flank to deal with the 1-on-3 there. And now I am extending out slightly, and now I'm about to make the decision to turn back in to engage. I have to commit to the fight here, no matter what happens, because if you take a look at the entire map, which is what I'm doing at this point, and I can afford to do that because he's out of range and I'm slowly extending away, you can assess the situation and see what's happened. The team basically has collapsed. Our squad is also basically collapsed. We've already lost our second element. Flank is already in really deep trouble, and my faith in him to get out of this situation is like really, really low at this point. Of course, I don't say that. If you're a leader, it's your responsibility to not say things openly that would affect your teammates' mental behavior or emotions. Yeah, I think emotions would be the more accurate term. Yeah, you kind of despair, because if the leader despairs, right, then the squad is in despair, and then it's over at that point. If morale collapses, it's very hard to hype up the morale again. It's and it does factor in, right? So it depends on like how serious you take the game. Everyone knows I take my games too damn seriously, but I've also learned that you can't expect everyone to be playing at like a professional level. That's never going to happen. People want to play the video game. That's the whole point. So you have to make compromises here and there. So for me, however, as the leader, I mean, this is something that I'm willing to do where I'm always thinking, and no matter what kind of game, if it's a team-oriented game, always thinking is like, what am I saying and how am I saying it? And I could do that because no one else pays the price, right? The other aspect of this is like, training or like teaching or lecturing. These are things which is no longer an individual person's. These are things that affect other people. It's not just the individual now, because you're now bringing other people into this other aspect of the game that they most likely are not interested at all. And you can't force people to do that because this is not a professional game. This is just a video game. And if you do that, you risk either alienating or discouraging or just, upsetting players if you try to push them in an unprofessional environment. That's just the way it is. What I do is that I make compromises, basically. It's like you gotta treat them like children a little bit, and then you gotta like, dangle the piece of candy here and say, oh, look at this. Don't worry about the stick behind you that's about to whack you, but look at this piece of candy, and give them a bit of the candy here and there over, very long periods of time, and you'll be able to make them do things that they otherwise would never have done before. So, yeah, I like went off on a tangent there. But now, well, back to the fight here. So Frank's basically going to die. He's actually made a pretty good play out of it. He got himself into a seriously bad position, and he's not dead. He's actually managed to extend. But of course, the problem is that once you're down on the deck like that, the enemy is at full initiative, and the enemy basically has the field. Yeah, you can see right here in terms of the stats. That's basically less than half the enemy team's alive, and it's just us left on our side. Yep. Now, Frank is going to try and make a last-ditch play at the end here, but we're caught out because the rest of the enemy team that went down and mopped up the rest of our team, they're now in our way. So, I'm taking my time here, and it's around about here the 109 breaks in to attack flank, and I turn back in. And yep, this is where the main fight begins. So it took me quite some time to turn in there. That's because that my mentality is now switched. I mean, we now have to switch from the team fighting doctrine to how I usually play solo, which I don't do much anymore, which is basically you gotta bait the whole team. You just bait them, right? Let them take the hits, let them drag everyone down low, and then it's up to you to win the game with an advantage. This only works if you're good enough to actually capitalize on the advantage. So get shots there on 155. He's on fire. He goes down there, I believe. Flank is now tangled with the F4, spit, and 0. So I have complete energy, altitude, positional advantage. So that's the 155 gone. Now I isolate the spit. Now you can afford to do this because no one else in this game plays the game from a team-oriented kind of perspective. So it's always easy to isolate people, and it's always easy to wait for them to make stupid decisions because they're just in it for themselves. Even though on paper it's a 16v16, it's not really, right. It's usually a 1v15v16. Like everyone, including the players on your own team, are going to be making decisions that usually make them a liability instead of an asset. But it is what it is. So Flank's dragging all the 3 down there. This is the best play he can do because there's not much he can do. He's already dropped position, altitude. So he's just splitting up the enemy team, which is to my advantage here, because now I don't need to fight everybody all at the same time. So Helldiver's coming back. He's still quite a ways away. He's 5 clicks out there. So I can take my time with this Spitfire here. I've already crit him, I believe, so he's about to die. The way I'm calculating here, when you're flying the 63 at least, I want to try and knock out all the planes that are more maneuverable than me. So the Spitfire and the 0. There's a second 0 off to the left there. He'll prove to be a problem. And the 190 A4, he's not much of a threat anymore, especially since he's down low. So the Helldiver's jockeying for position. Yep, and he takes too long. He basically is waiting to get into the perfect position. He should have already dropped in by now, because I'm about to murder all his friends and he will be isolated by the time he gets down here. So the Spit's already gone. I've got advantage on the 0. I'm zooming up away from the 0. Helldiver comes in. I believe that I didn't see the Helldiver because I think I lost sight once he went straight above me. I can't quite recall. But I thought I would have nailed the 0 here. Now the 190 is turned back in. Now we've got to just skedaddle on out of here. We've got a 0 trying to cut me off on the right there, and we've got another 0 trailing behind far away. So yeah, it is a very, very bad situation right now. And you can see all the decisions that were made prior to this that got us here. But yeah, just how it is. This is one of the big reasons why you don't want to have your squad fly different aircraft. Now, of course, I'm going back to my philosophy of, like, always play to win. Like I said, you're not going to get everybody on the same page, and do not push it because this is not a professional game. But if we're talking from the theoretical standpoint and practical standpoint, you do want everyone to fly the same aircraft because that way it's very, very easy to fly formation, keep everybody together, and when you want to make maneuvers, especially squad tactics, try to bracket the enemy or fly in a combat spread formation, it's very easy to do when everyone has the same airframe. So we've made it back to the base. Flank is about to get strafed. He's going to die there. AAA does not work in our favor here. But the Helldiver will go down. I sniped the 190. And I'm basically almost out of ammo. I think my gun jam, my cannon jam, so I have to land here either way. Yeah, and there goes that. So we are now all alone against 3 bandits. 1, 2, yep. So it's 2 zeros and I think a 109. I'm not entirely sure. But it's definitely 2 zeros. We can see them right here. Oh, and a Typhoon. That's the other guy. Okay. So we'll speed up the game here. So we're in a 1-on-3 situation, and here's things that you can, you know, think about when you're in a situation like this where you're landing halfway through the game. So we're at the 13-minute, 30-second timer. I already know that the 2 zeros were here. They chased us all the way to field, but they didn't pursue us. So I know, kind of guess, they're either going to be low on fuel or low on ammunition. I think the zero can take, not that. Yeah, no, fuel won't be too much of a problem for a zero, but you can kind of guess when you get to this part of the game that people are going to go back to their base. And the person who goes back to base first gets an advantage because now I get to take off, climb, get position. And whilst they're trying to do things, either hit the ground or land, by the time they are finished with whatever it is they're doing, I'll be closer to them with an altitude advantage. So it's imperative that I be very aggressive now. So those are things that you can think about if you ever get into a situation like this where it's the end game, like a proper end game. Let me speed up the game here. Okay, so Typhoon gets caught out all alone. 2 zeros have gone back to base. I get a cannon shot into the Typhoon and light him on fire, but he does not die. This has been happening quite a lot lately. Fires really don't kill anybody these days, unless you're in a Mustang. So I have complete advantage of the Typhoon. I'm just taking my time. No need to worry. I know the zeros have gone back home. Gonna loop around the top. He's gonna try and pitch up, which is a mistake. He stalls himself out, and he's on fire. He will put out the fire, and he will come back later. But for the most part, he's out of the game because he's critically hurt. So now I'm pushing my advantage. We go over to the airfield. Now there's 2 airfields on this map. There's a secondary airfield that's closer with no AAA, and the primary airfield further back. No point trying to push all the way to the primary because you're not going to be able to dive in on them. AAA is going to kill you. So I usually go for the secondary first and hope that they're pretty impatient and have gone to the secondary. Which is what happens here. I think one of them goes secondary and the other one goes to the primary. So there it is. There's a dude that went to the secondary and he's now taken off. And here you can see he landed, repaired, refueled, but I'm already here with all the advantages in the world. So fight is in my favor. So I just need to take my time and kill this guy. This is where the Typhoon is limping back. But I get him later. So the zero's gone, snap his wing off. And now we're in fight with the Typhoon. Typhoon has a slight advantage now, but his airframe shot to hell because he was on fire for a good few seconds earlier. I'm dragging him out here. I'm playing for time because I know his engine's hurt. So the reason why he's got a lot of speed here is because he was at altitude and I dived first. So he glided until he was close to me, then he dove. And now I'm pretty sure his engine's cooking. So he's slow, he turns away. Not entirely sure what he was trying to do here. Reverses the turn, but he's got no speed, barely any engine power. And he's toast. There goes that. And now we've gone from a 1-on-3 into a 1-on-1. Immediately start climbing. Start hitting towards at an off angle to the base. You don't want to climb directly to the base because if the guy is taking his time and then he only starts climbing out once you get close, basically he can cam the airfield, which we don't want. Let me speed it up a little bit. Yep, there he is. So you wanna like bait him out basically. You wanna keep a distance. He knows that he's at an altitude disadvantage. So this is usually the point where people will just cam the airfield and start circle climbing around the airfield. But we're a sufficient distance away now, and I'm not entirely sure if he saw me. No, he did not. He was not paying attention. And he's gone. There's that. So things covered in this video, certain aspects about how you win the match. The most ideal situation is you get 4 guys that kind of know what they're doing, who know how to work as a team in the same aircraft. And you have the flight leader who kind of knows what he's doing, knows when to climb, when to turn in to engage. He's got to have that kind of sixth sense as to when to take the fight. I've talked about this in the earlier video where I've talked about taking an early engagement where you don't have a clear advantage or sometimes you have a disadvantage, but you still need to push the situation. This one was kind of one of those, but because we were flying in a 63, it wasn't really that disadvantageous a position. In the previous video that I talked about this, we were flying Mustangs, in which case you really do want an altitude advantage, but we couldn't afford that because the team had already collapsed by the time we got to the 5-6 minute marker. So we had to push the advantage, go in, and then start the fight. And it's at that point that when you have a bad situation like that, that you want every other advantage in your favor, which comes the part, like I said, the training, the discipline. You're not going to get that every time in the game. In fact, I think this squad is the only one that gets it. And we only get it around 1 out of 5 games or so where everyone's locked in and everyone's in perfect formation, perfect approaches, good comms from the gate. Right out of the gate, you get the good fight, even though you were at a disadvantage in terms of altitude or in terms of numbers. The enemy has a numerical advantage up high. You can always turn the tables once you get all these minute details. But it's trying to get everyone to do these minute details that, compromises have to be made. You're not going to get it all the time, and you can't get mad about it. Because if you do get mad about it, then no one's going to play with you. It's as simple as that. And if no one plays with you, well then, what are you going to do, This is where the fun is. So you gotta, you can't win everything. You gotta. It's just how life is. You win some, you lose some. It's just how it is. Yeah.